thank you so much for coming. The purpose is to make sure everyone's in a space that will make sense and be useful for you. This is intended for seniors and the parents of seniors who are starting the application process right now. So if you're junior or younger, you probably would want to go to another session. They are all going to be taped as well, I think, although I don't see anybody taped. Oh, hey, there you go. So, I'm Miss Gaskins, Laura Gaskins. I'm one of the school counselors here.
And I'm Amy Camp. I'm also one of the counselors here.
And I'm Pete Colbert. I'm Associate Dean of Admissions at Virginia Wesleyan College.
So we're going to give this presentation exactly like we gave it to your senior students last week. We went into English classes, so all the seniors got the spiel. They got, some information, and we purposely give you the exact same PowerPoint so that you guys are seeing the same thing. But please, as we go along, ask questions. That's what we're here for.
Sorry.
Good start.
All right, so the first thing that we talk to our seniors about is that we want to make sure that they've taken care of or at least have a plan for their SAT, ACT testing. So for the SAT, they register at collegeboard.org. The registration deadline has been extended, late registration for the October 11th test date, and then the November 8th is coming up. SAT 2s, those are also called subject tests. So they are shorter in length than the SAT 1. They're about an hour each, and they cover a specific subject. So you can take a subject test in literature, or physics, or chemistry. Come on in, guys. Yeah. Not all schools require subject tests. Some do. It's typically the more competitive schools that require or ask for subject tests. So what we say to students is that they need to make sure that they're looking onto the college's websites to see whether or not they're required. Any questions about SAT or SAT 2s?
When you're taking it for October the 11th,
Mm-hmm.
will you get results back in enough time to know if you need to take it in November?
So our recommendation is that unless you have to take them back to back like that you would want to spread it out a little bit. You're going to get your results about 2.5 weeks later. And in reality, that's not going to give you much time to actively work to improve your score if you're taking them back to back, because you're going to really only have about 1.5 weeks before you would be taking it again. So depending on the deadline type, so if you're doing regular decision, which is usually a January 1 or a January 15th, then you could consider the December testing date as well.
The ACT is yet another standardized test that colleges will accept. The website that you can go to register for that is www.actstudent.org. And here are two of the upcoming deadlines to register for that test. October 25th is the regular deadline, and the late registration deadline is October 3rd. And December 13th is the next available opportunity to register, and the late registration date for that is November 21st.
If I could just chime in
Please.
briefly with this. From the college admissions side, I typically advise students, if you have the time and resources, to take each of these tests once and see which one of them fits better for you. They're very different tests. They're compiled differently, they're scored differently. So it's not unusual to see a student do better on one than the other, or even if they scored similarly on the two, they felt better about one of them than they did about the other one. So if you take both of them once, whichever one you did better on, maybe plan to do that one more time to improve the scores, because most schools are going to take either of these tests without any preference.
Right, absolutely. With the SAT, that's typically the one that our students start off with, just because they've taken the PSAT in 10th grade as well as 11th grade, so they're more familiar with the format of the SAT. So that's typically the one that students start with. If we were, like in the Midwest, we would be talking ACT, 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 and then we'd be like, oh, and there's this other thing called the SAT that you could try. So it really is regional, but there is no preference, like Peter said, for schools. So the one thing about the ACT that's difficult is that the testing centers, there aren't as many. So you might have to go to Richmond to take the ACT. And these are some of the differences between the SAT and the ACT. So ACT goes a little bit higher in math. It goes through the trig, where the SAT only goes through Algebra 2. Any questions about SAT or ACT? really important. It is the student's responsibility to make sure that his or her scores have been sent directly from the testing agency to every single college that the student is applying to. So on the transcript at Monticello, we have scores listed. It's going to be the highest within each category, regardless of which time you took it. But that is not considered an official score report. So how do you do that? You go onto your College Board or ACT student account and you list the schools that should receive your scores. And then they're going to be sent directly from the testing agency. So you need to make sure that official score reports are coming from the testing agency. As far as the fee waiver goes, if anybody thinks that they might be eligible for a fee waiver, you're eligible for, you can have 2 for the SAT, 2 for the subject tests, and then as well as the ACT. So if you aren't done with your testing or you think that you might be eligible, please come talk to your school counselor. Yes?
Do you get some kind of notice that it's been sent? Like, I know when we just did the ACT, it said you get 4 free colleges. So we listed 4.
Mhm.
So we just assume that it's been sent and it's taken care of. So we don't have to check with anyone or.
I've never had an issue with a score not making it. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I would say that, typically if the school is awaiting the score, I guess probably depending on the college, but, at least speaking from a small school perspective, if we're waiting on the scores and they don't show up, we'll contact you and let you know that they haven't gotten through yet. But what you may do is, based on deadlines at the individual schools, just follow up prior to the deadline to make sure that
Right.
because they'll tell you if they've received them or not.
And most schools have, an on your account for your application, you go in and it'll show kind of your status, and it shows what they've received and what they haven't. And also, if you go onto your College Board or ACT account, it also shows, because sometimes you don't remember, you registered for the SAT 4 months ago. It shows the schools that you listed to receive scores.
So my understanding is that if you take the test multiple times, the SAT test, they'll send your best score in any.
So what schools have told us is that they are going to quote super score for you, meaning that they're going to take the highest critical reading, the highest math, and the highest writing score, regardless of when you took it. So if you took it in March and scored a 600 in math, but you only scored a 500 when you retook it, the 600 is what they're going to look at.
Okay.
Where, let's say, the critical reading was swapped, and you did better on critical reading the second time. They're going to take the best, regardless of when you took it, and that's the score that they're going to look at. So what we say is, go ahead and just send your scores. They're going to do that for you. They're going to take the highest. SAT College Board does have something called score choice, which I don't like. I think it's a way for them to make money. What it is they say that you can, so don't list the schools to receive your scores. Wait, and when you're done, you can pick a specific sitting to send to the schools. But you can only pick one sitting. You can't say, I only want to send critical reading for March, and I only want to send math and writing from May. You can only pick it by a test date. I guess that's the better way for me to say that. Oh, and they charge you the $12 to do it later, where the cost to send 4 is included in it when you do it up front. So it also encourages students to take it more than they might have done previously, because they figure, I don't have to send those scores, they won't see it. So I think it's a way for them to make money and confuse everyone. That's my biased opinion. What do you think?
I agree 100%.
Okay, there you go. So colleges, they want your application to look as good as possible. So they want to see, they're gonna cherry pick, so to speak. Any other questions about?
I would say that one thing that I think has just been fairly recent in the past couple of years with the College Board is that if you've taken the test once or twice, say, but you're signed up to take it again at an upcoming test date, if you request for your scores to be sent, they will wait until after that upcoming test date and send them all at once.
Oh.
So keep that in mind.
Question? You? Yes.
So just to clarify, when you take your SAT, you send your scores to the colleges before you apply?
Correct, it's part of the application process.
Yes.
You put them in when you register for the SAT, but you can also go onto your account later and do it as well.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I was just going to ask, Doesn't it mess things up though if they hold your scores and you're trying to go early decision or early action?
It can, that's why I
Right.
mentioned it to you. So I believe that if you contact them and specifically request to go ahead and have them sent, they will do that. But they may charge you again if you have to send them again from a subsequent test time.
And, it seems that some of the schools out there were emphasizing just 2 scores, the reading and writing, and some, or not the writing, but the reading and math. So how does that work? How do you think of it in terms of 2 or all 3, or does it depend on the school, or?
It really depends on the school,
Okay.
very much so. We do not look at the writing section of the SAT, so we're looking at the, sort of the old 1600 maximum score. And many schools are doing that, but there are many as well that have taken the writing into account at this point. Initially, when they first changed the test and added the writing portion, College Board came to us and said, wait, don't take the writing scores into account yet. Let us get some historical data so that you know what the scores mean before you use them to judge people. Many schools, us included, feel like we still don't really have enough information to determine whether or not those scores are meaningful for predictive modeling, which is what the purpose is. So it'll really just depend on the college. You'll need to check some shit with each school, how they measure.
Do we need to send a sound report for SAT too?
I believe that when you asked, yes, if you had only requested for your SATs to be sent and then you took the subject test later, yes, you need to request another. But have you requested SAT scores to be sent after you took the SAT subject tests? Because they would be included on the same report.
I've already taken the SAT test and I requested it to be sent.
Okay, so yes, you'll want to go on your College Board account.
So if I take like SATs twice, and the first time I do it, I select 4 schools or how many schools. When I take the SAT the second time, do I have to
You do.
send the form?
You do.
So you're paying for it twice.
Well, the first 4 are, they say free. It's included in the $50 that you paid for them, for the SAT. So the first time that you take the SAT, you look at your 4 schools, they'll get a score report. But if you take it again, you need to list schools again for them to be able to get your scores.
So if we didn't list those schools.
Then you can go back onto your College Board account for free. No. For $10.
Some resources that you want to have not yet done, so research colleges are collegeboard.org, which is the same website as SAT. We also have colleges similar to this evening that come here, representatives from different schools will come here throughout the school day, so students are able to sign up and attend that college visit here. We also provide information on our website where you can go and search schools. Meet with Jackie, myself, or any other counselor that you may have here to also have discussions about programs, schools here in the area based on what your interests are, and also visit campuses. So again, you're going to or researching a place where you will spend at least 4 years of your life. So you need to be very well invested in that school. I tell my students that it's important to visit a college when they're in session. Avoid going during winter break, spring break, or when you don't really or won't really get a good idea of how you would fit into that school. So I think we allow 2 excused absences if you were to go on an official college visit during school. Okay? There's a Monday coming up into the month, right? You don't have school, that'd be a great day to go.
Is that 2 absences per school year or cumulative?
Yes, correct, yes, for school year. You're good if you did 2 report. So when you compile your list of colleges, we say typically 5 to 7, sure, we have some students who apply to many more, and we have some students who come in, they have 1 school, and that's it. They're very, very sure they're gonna get in based on their criteria, that's fine as well, but typically 5 to 7 is a good number. So we have some of these factors to consider. What I think is important to point out is that the first 3 factors are things that they're looking at from you as an applicant to say, what's your GPA, what's your course history, meaning the classes that you've taken and the rigor of your program, what were your SAT or ACT scores. The rest of those are things that you're looking at them and saying, okay, well, what do you have to offer me? You guys have worked way too hard to make sure that you're to only look at schools and say, oh, which ones can I get in based on what I did? No, they're courting you just the same way that you want to get into their schools. So a couple that might not automatically come to mind. So when we talk about 4-year graduation rates, some schools at this point are really looking at their 5-year graduation rate or 6-year graduation rate, but seeing, okay, what percentage when they started here are actually leaving with a diploma 5 or 6 years later. Another one that I really like is the freshman retention rate. That rate shows you, okay, of the number of the 100% of students who started their freshman year, how many are coming back for their second year? If that's a really low percentage, you should ask that question. You should say, I noticed that only 70% come back for their sophomore year. Can you just speak to that? It's a great question to be asking. Post-college graduation placements, so if grad school is something that you're considering, asking, how well do your graduates do as far as placing into grad school programs or internships or your job placement percentage. So those are some things that you should be asking of the schools, not just what they're asking from you. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I think those are all valid things to check out. And I again would echo the campus visit to that, because that'll answer more questions than you'll ever be able to think of just by walking around and feeling the place out.
So we stress the importance of making sure you apply to a safety target and a reach school. So the safety school means you, the student, your criteria where you currently stand exceeds the criteria and requirements that school you're applying to is asking, okay? The target school means that you fit right in within that 50 percentile range, the median range of what they're asking in terms of GPA and SAT and or ACT scores. And the reach school, that's your dream school. So the qualifications and the requirements are beyond where you currently stand, but you choose to apply anyway. Applicants or applications, those who are reviewing your applications will look holistically. So they're looking at your SAT score, how rigorous of a course load you're taking, your GPA, and also in your involvement within and outside of school. So don't be deterred or discouraged from applying to your dream school, because essentially your personal statement or personal essay could kind of take place of a lower, not too low, but a low standardized test score or GPA. Okay, so we do encourage that you apply to at least 1 or 2 of each of those schools. Any questions about that?
We want to make sure that, and down here it says your reach, target, and safety schools are specific to you. If your friend says, yep, VCU, that's my target school, I'm running, okay, that doesn't mean it's your target school. Your target school, reach school, and safety school are based on your criteria, so your SAT testing, your GPA, things like that. The other thing about the safety school is I've had some students say, oh, this school, yeah, it's my safety school, but I would never go there. Then that's not your safety school. Your safety school needs to be a school where you wouldn't mind going, even if it is just for a year before you transfer. And there are often times when a student might end up at a safety school, love it, and stay for 4 years and think, oh my gosh, I could never have gone anywhere else. So I just want to make sure that when you have a safety school on your list, it should still be somewhere that you would be excited about going. The other thing about safety schools or your target schools, yes, you've worked really hard and you want to get into the best school you can go to, but I do want to point out that maybe a target or a safety school might offer some things to you as a very competitive candidate, things like their honors programs or different things like that they can offer you that might make that a more appealing choice. So when you get into your safety school, still look at it and see what they might be willing to offer you. And some of that's going to come in the financial aid award letter that they send to you in the spring based off of your family's financial information, but still take a second look at that school.
Let me just say real quickly, that kind of emphasizes the importance of visiting campuses. So again, if you're applying to a certain school and that's your safety school, try to visit beforehand to see if that is indeed somewhere that you are willing to attend.
Exactly, and then I would say, if possible, visit again after you've been accepted, because you'll look at a place much differently knowing that it's actually an option. that you've got an acceptance letter in your back pocket. You're gonna take a closer look, you're gonna have, go through it with a more fine-tooth comb at that point. And again, things may bubble to the top that you didn't realize about the place early on, just because you didn't know what you didn't know. And so I definitely would encourage at least one visit, but if you can visit again after you've been accepted, that'll be helpful to you.
I say, I ended up going to JMU, which was not the most competitive school on my list, but I got in there and I was immediately asked to apply to their honors program. My psychology 101 class had 10 students in it compared to the 200 that other students sat through. I went to New York City for an honors semester and paid the same tuition that I would have paid in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I signed up for my classes right after the athletes, so I had my pick. And so for me, that was the perfect fit. I loved it. I thought maybe I would transfer after I went, stayed 4 years, loved it. So just fun. This slide, so if your student is applying to a school that requires or asks for a letter of recommendation from the school counselor, then there are some documents that you have to turn into your school counselor in order for us to write your letter of recommendation. This is different than the letter of recommendation from a teacher. The teacher won't ask for all of these things, but the reason the counselor does is our letter is more comprehensive. So yes, we're going to talk about the rigor of your program, classes you've taken, but we're also going to maybe pull a quote from a teacher or from you or from a parent talking about, you know, what you aspire to do or things like that. So really quickly, and all these forms are available in the school counseling office and they're also on our website. So 3 teacher evaluation forms. The teachers are used to getting these. They check them off, brag about you, and then they turn them directly into the counselor. The guardian fills out. Activity sheet and senior autobiography, the senior fills out. And then, let's see, what am I missing? Transcript request form. This one's the most important. So the transcript request form, even if your counselor is not writing a letter of recommendation for you, the transcript request form is the way that we are legally allowed to send your personal information to colleges. So you put the deadline date, the name of the school, the mailing address, and we fill out the mailing date when we postmark it. Each college, it's $2 for the transcript, and that $2 covers the initial mailing of your transcript, a mailing in February that includes your midterm grades on it, and a final transcript wherever you end up attending. So you can turn in as many of these as you need to. If you turn one in and then another school pops on your list, great. Just fill out another transcript request form and give it to your counselor. And we don't mail any of these forms off to colleges. We're just reading through them, and it's helpful for us to be able to write our letter. Secondary school reports, we have a slide about that.
The secondary school report forms, so these forms are specific questions that are asked of us. So they ask about your GPA, how rigorous of a course load you're taking, specifically what courses you are taking this year, as well as the number of students in the graduating class. So if you run across a form and it's asking specific questions that you yourself know, you cannot answer, that is more than likely the SSR or the secondary school report form. And it may not be entitled secondary school report form, it may be entitled counselor form, counselor evaluation. But do bring that in or have your student bring that in. It's your responsibility to give those forms to us so that we can complete it, and we send it off along with your transcripts. Most schools, Common App, JMU, Virginia Tech, William & Mary, just to name a few, have these forms. So again, just make sure that if you see those forms, and even if you don't, you can definitely follow up with us and ask if that school you're applying to has an SSR form.
It's confusing because some schools don't have them.
Right.
So that's why it's like, you don't know if you need to be looking for it, so you just want to check that. And some, the student has to sign off on, and then they give it to the school counselor. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So would each of those schools, just for example, have their own SSR?
Correct.
Or was it-
Yes,
okay.
yes.
The Common App, it's a common one that we fill out, and that's online at this point, but yes.
Hold on. Okay, on the transcript form where it says mailing address, if it's under the Common App, do you just want us to
You can just put Common App, because we're going to do that. I think all of us at this point are doing it online, right? I don't think any of the counselors are mailing it in.
Is the SSR basically like on their website, their
It's on their application. So you're typing through the application, you're answering all the questions about yourself, and then it says, size of senior class, how rigorous was your program in comparison to other applicants? And you're like, That's probably at the top, it probably says counselor report form.
What if, like, Norwich University does not have one of those?
Okay, and they might not, you could just give a
So-
call to the admissions office and
Double
confirm.
check, okay.
So this is the scary deadline, but don't get scared. So those forms, we say, are due to your school counselor 30 school days before your first deadline date. The reason that we do that is that each of us have about 60 seniors on our caseload, and so we've got a lot of these forms coming into us, so we ask to have, this much notice in order to write that letter of recommendation. So if you have a November 1st deadline, then they are due on September 18th, but don't panic and don't think your counselor won't write you a letter. Please just come talk to us and we'll work something out, get it to us in a week or so, or something like that. It won't be a problem. These are the types of deadlines that colleges have. So early decision is binding, meaning that you can only apply to one early decision school. Because if you get in, then you're notifying every other school that you're not applying there anymore because you got into your dream school, you're good to go. An early action school is non-binding. It's kind of the best of both worlds. You apply early and you find out early that you're not bound to attend. You still get to wait to hear back from all the other schools before making your decision. Regular decision usually is a January 1, January 15th, February 1 deadline, and then rolling admission is where a school has a certain number of, aren't you guys rolling?
We are-
Yes, so you have a certain number of seats, and as the applications come in, they review them and they give answers out. So the one thing with that is that as they're giving these answers out, these numbers of seats are diminishing, and so they're going to become pickier as they go along. So we always encourage students to apply early in a rolling admission cycle. Would you echo
I would
that?
definitely agree with that, yeah. Because typically with a rolling admission, what you'll see from a college is either an early acceptance or a deferral of a decision where they'll actually contact you and say, look, we reviewed your file, but we haven't made a decision yet. We want to see X, Y, and Z from you. So it could be we want to see first quarter grades, we want you to take another round of tests, et cetera, et cetera.
Like
So
SAT or ACT.
the sooner you know that information, the more impact you can have on their final decision. So the earlier the better in terms of that process.
Many schools are going away from early decision, and the main reason for that is that they're expecting you to give an answer and commit to a school before you get any of the financial aid information from them, because you guys can't fill out the FAFSA, which is a free application for federal student aid, until after January 1 of the senior year. And so early decision, you're saying, I'm going, I don't even know how much aid you're giving me, I'm going. And so that's why some schools are kind of shying away. And you don't get to pick what the school's going to have. So some schools say we're early action or we're early decision or we're both. Some have that, and it would all be listed on their application websites. So you'd want to check and see. Yes?
So this deadline, is that the case for like teacher recommendations as well, or?
No, only the teacher evaluation forms, yes, that we mentioned on the
Yeah.
previous page, but not for teachers' letters of recommendation. That's up to the teacher. So there might be a teacher who you go to and they say they can get that letter to you in a few days. Or there might be a teacher that says, okay, I need a month. It depends on the teacher.
Is
So you
that
wanna check.
sent like online directly to the school, or is that sent in the form of a letter? How are they?
Yes, is the answer to that question. It depends on the school. So Common App has a system where the student would type in the teacher's email address, and then the teacher is prompted to upload a letter of recommendation to the Common App site. You want to make sure that you've asked that teacher to write a letter before they get prompted to upload that letter to the Common App site. And then other schools, it's old school. You give the teacher a stamped, already addressed envelope, and the teacher slips that letter in and mails it to the admissions office. So you'll have to check on the college applications site to see how they receive them. How do you all receive letters?
Any which way, honestly. Typically, they'll either come in hard copy form, oftentimes enclosed with a transcript or something along those lines, or we'll take them via email as well. They can just email them directly to the admissions email account with the student's name and high school so that we know who it's going to. It'll just vary.
Can former Albemarle County teachers fill a college?
If you're able to get in touch with them, absolutely.
With rolling, with the financial package, if they say yes, well, obviously the financial isn't out then, how does that work? Like,
You get to wait to decide whether you accept, you know, whether you're going there until you get that financial aid
so you would
information.
recommend waiting post-FAFSA until declaring yes?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I think your mom or dad does too. Usually it's like a May 1 deadline.
May 1st is.
May 1st is your
the
deposit
decision,
deadline.
Universal deposit deadline, unless you're under some other, like, early decision
Okay.
process or something along those lines.
The one other deadline that I want to mention is that some schools have earlier deadlines for financial aid. So they say that you have to apply by a certain date to be considered for financial aid, where the other deadline might be later. So that, it gets really confusing, but you want to check their websites to see that as
And
well.
the easiest way to handle that is the earlier the better for everywhere. I mean, regardless of if the deadline's January 15th, that doesn't mean they won't accept your application in September. You can do it early and know that you're in before everything and not have to worry about it.
We're running out of time, Mr. Johnson.
Teacher recommendations. So, again, it's important to know how many teacher recommendations you are allowed to submit. There are some schools that only accept one, so you may want to ask your counselor, or if you're new to the school, a teacher previously that you just have a really good relationship with. Whereas there are other schools that may accept 2 to 3. So again, read and know for certain what and how many recommendations you're able to submit. Approach your teachers and ask if they would be willing to speak positively about you and write a letter of recommendation. Ask them well in advance of the due date, so similar to the counselors, the teacher, the likelihood of the teacher that you're approaching to write a letter for you is that you're not the only student that is asking them to write a letter. So be mindful of the time, the deadline, and just be respectful of that.
The personal essay, most students in the senior English class will be working on an essay. So again, depends on the school. Is it just a personal statement, or do they want to know what your favorite word is and why? It depends on the school, so you have to check their applications to see. But just know that a former English teacher or school counselor, we are absolutely here to proofread those for you, give our feedback. Also, somebody from UVA came last week, I think it was, and gave a presentation on the college essay, and that was videotaped, and it's available on our school counseling webpage. So that's a really good thing to watch if you weren't able to attend. And then if anybody is planning on possibly going to PVCC first and then maybe transferring to a four-year school, the timeline is a little bit delayed. And for many students, Piedmont is their safety school. They say, I'm going to apply to some four-year schools, but if that doesn't work out, then I might go to Piedmont first and then transfer. So the registration process happens in the spring. They do have a Virginia placement test that you have to take in order to determine what level of classes you would place into, and we do offer that here at Monticello. Miss Neal in the College and Career Center, she's really our point person when it comes to Piedmont, and she's located at the back of the forum. That's where the College and Career Center is, so you could pop in and say hello to her. The SAT is not required by Piedmont, but we do recommend it, because I think the only thing worse than waking up early on a Saturday to take the SAT is waking up early to take the SAT on a Saturday when you're 20. And you have to sit in this testing room with 17-year-olds. So some schools, they are going to ask for that if you go to Piedmont for a year and then transfer. So also the math is maybe more fresh, because that it only went through Algebra 2. So we do encourage you to take the SAT. And you can wait and do it in the spring if you wanted to, that's fine. And Piedmont does have guaranteed transfer programs with all the public colleges and many of the private. Do you have one with Piedmont?
We don't do a guaranteed.
Put you on the
transfer.
spot, sorry.
We have articulation agreements.
Great.
For certain programs.
So with those, it's important that the first thing out of your mouth after hello to your admissions counselor is, I want to transfer after 2 years under a guaranteed transfer agreement, because there's a certain set of classes and a certain GPA that you have to maintain and earn in order to be able to qualify for those guaranteed transfer agreements. You can also just always apply to transfer not under a guaranteed transfer agreement also, if you maybe don't hit that cut GPA score, but there's that. Meet your college application.
So, the student has already taken the placement test for like dual enrollment, they wouldn't take it again.
The math placement test they'll need to take. Okay. But the reading, they're good. Scholarships and financial aid, it's the student's responsibility to do that. We do have a scholarship webpage on our school counseling page, and I say go to the other high schools' web pages and look at their scholarships, because we only post what we hear about. So we're not above that. Some scholarship links, all of this you can get with your school counselor.
And may I interject really quickly? For those of you who have students that are seniors or parents of seniors, and you have yet to have or schedule your
Yes.
meeting with your counselor, please do so soon. And that's just an opportunity for us to meet with you all, have some discussion about post-graduation plans and how we can help support in getting your son or daughter there. So reach out. Yes, reach out soon if you have yet to do so, and thank you guys.
That's it, thank you.
Have a good night.